Now, actually, we get down to some important stuff that comes down to us today and has to do with our times today. 1843, William Miller, who was the founder of the Millerite movement, this is where the Seventh-day Adventist Church comes from, predicted that Jesus would come March 21st, 1843. That didn't happen. So the following year, he made these huge predictions about October 22nd, 1844. And this was an event that was like what we've just been through. Mass hysteria. News was all over the country. People quit their jobs. People left their families. They sold their homes to prepare for the second coming. And the result was a historical event that is now called by historians the Great Disappointment. Because they all went out, they got ready, nothing happened. This was another one that harmed a lot of people. In 1850, they didn't learn their lesson from that. Then the next one of the early leaders of the Seventh-day Adventists, Ellen White, she kept cranking out predictions every few years of the second coming, and that would pass, and another one would pass, and another one would pass, and she'd just make a new prediction, and everybody said, oh, okay, that's fine. And I don't understand how one keeps doing this. Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, announced in 1835 that Jesus would return within 56 years. I don't know how he figured that out. In 1914, a relatively new organization, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, now known as the Jehovah's Witnesses, predicted the second coming. Now, they still believe and preach that Jesus returned invisibly in that year, and he has been ruling, that we are in the millennium period now with Jesus ruling invisibly. At least that's how they tell it. They then went on to predict another second coming in 1918, 1920, 1925, 1941, 1975, and 1994. Now, one of the interesting things with the Jehovah's Witnesses is they believe they're kind of Old Testament, skip most of Jesus and the book of Revelation together. They believe in the 144,000, that number, as literal. Now, they have several million members, so that means that most of them aren't even going to make it into heaven. So that's a kind of weird situation. Had a meteorologist who said that the conjunction of 6 planets would cause the sun to explode in 1919, and I think he was probably wrong. 1954, I mean, let's not just abuse Christians here. Dorothy Martin, a follower of Dianetics, the Scientology guy, claimed that she had had a message from the planet Clarion, and those people told her that the world would be destroyed by flood and the faithful would be rescued at midnight by flying saucers, and she had a whole bunch of people who gathered at her house for this event. Her husband, who didn't believe any of this, was downstairs watching TV the whole time. 1970, some of you remember this. How many of you might have a copy? I still have a copy of this in the basement. The late, great planet Earth, Hal Lindsey, stirred up a lot of controversy. Now, he avoided too many dates, but it was like going to happen right now. He did say that the 70s was the era of the Antichrist foretold by Moses and Jesus. He started rumors, including, how many of you remember when ATMs came out? The first ATMs. Up in Pennsylvania, they were called Money Access Centers, MACs. When they came out, that card, having one of those cards was the mark of the beast, and that number on the card was the mark of the beast, and this was the Satan taking over the world. So if you get your money out of the machine these days, you need to know you're just going to go straight to hell. Now, the interesting thing is that book sold 28 million copies. The other interesting thing is that Hal Lindsey copyrighted the book so that he would have future rights to all the money from it. Now, if Jesus was coming right away, why do you even bother? He is still in business with a TV show called The Hal Lindsey Report, and he predicts the second coming with regularity every few years. He currently claims that Obama is the Antichrist. Now, you may or may not like Mr. Obama, and you may think he's not the greatest president. Some of you might think he's a wonderful president. But I think most of us would agree he's just a black guy from Hawaii. He is not the Antichrist. 1988, and I could not get any better picture of this guy than that. There aren't many pictures of him around. Publication of 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988 by Edgar C. Whisenant. And he went on to predict, every few years he'd predict another date for the rapture until he died and the rapture happened for him. 1992, I don't know if any of you remember this, Korean group called Mission for the Coming Days predicted October 28, 1992 as the date for the rapture, and they had signs spread all over America on poles and so on. I got a picture of one of them. As far as I could tell, they were wrong. 1994, Pastor John Hinkle of Christ Church in L.A. predicted June 9th, 1994, and that was when radio evangelist Harold Camping first started predicting the second comings. Now, something interesting I noticed in doing the research for this, Harold Camping does not have a degree in theology. His degree is in civil engineering. Now, this other fella, Edgar Whisenant, he also has a degree in engineering. And another fellow we're going to talk about toward the end has a degree in mechanical engineering. I think the message of this is engineers who go nuts start toying with numbers in the Bible and predict the end times. That's all I can figure out. 1995, we had the Left Behind series come out. How many of you read one of the Left Behind books or saw the movie? Okay. We're going to learn in just a minute about the background of Left Behind. I'm going to say right now that the stuff that's in these books is not in the Bible. Not if you read the Bible carefully. Followed by a series of movies that made a lot of money. Year 2000, well, you know, I don't have to tell you, we all remember that. Had people go nuts. I fell out in Louisville, built himself a multi-million-dollar underground bomb-proof shelter. Still there. Stocked up with food that he'd get through Y2K. I didn't do anything, and I got through Y2K just fine. And then we get down to Harold Camping and all the stuff that's been in the news the last few weeks, and all his mathematical proofs that yesterday was the Judgment Day. Guess what? Well, I guess we did have a couple people that departed. But Fred and Ethel, they were ready to go. This is the lady in Raleigh who quit her job, bought that car, got that car towed up, spent all her time for the last 6 or 8 months going around trying to convince people. They convinced, I don't know, I could not find out how many people had quit their jobs, sold their homes to go full-time around the country trying to preach this Looney Tunes prediction. Those people are all now jobless. Many of them are homeless. There were a whole bunch of people that were documented that had taken all their money out of the bank and budgeted it out so that they would be broke yesterday. They're now broke. This stuff is not harmless. I'm grateful that there were only 2 or 3 evident suicide attempts around the country, but there's usually crazy suicide attempts that go along with this stuff. I want to take a minute and have you discuss, just talk to the people right around you, the 2 or 3 people close to you. I want you to think for a minute about these questions. Now, obviously, those that are without jobs and homes, the harm to them is clear, but there's an additional harm that goes on with this. Ask yourself, how does each one of these failed predictions affect us as Christians and affect the way non-Christians perceive us? How are those outside the church regarding what has just happened, and how do they regard us in that context? And then the question, how should reasonable people of faith respond to this? Let me just give you a couple minutes and talk amongst yourselves.